High blood pressure can physically change the architecture of your arteries. Not metaphorically. The wall can thicken, the lumen can change, the vessel can become stiffer, and over time, the artery that was once simply exposed to high pressure can become part of the system keeping that pressure high. Read that again. The pressure changes the vessel. Then the changed vessel can help sustain the pressure. That is one of the most important feedback relationships in hypertension. And most men watch the number on the monitor without ever seeing what may be happening inside the wall that number is measuring, because blood pressure is not an abstract number. It is force acting against living tissue, beat after beat, day after day, year after year. And living tissue responds. It signals, it remodels, it changes. That is the language this chapter is going to read. Not because chronic stress is the single cause of vascular disease. It is not. Because blood pressure, inflammation, metabolic health, lipoproteins, smoking, age, genetics, kidney function, and autonomic regulation can all enter the vascular story. The vessel wall is where many of those forces eventually meet. Begin with what a healthy blood vessel is designed to be, not what it becomes, what it was. The arterial wall has three distinct layers. The outermost layer, the tunica adventitia, is composed primarily of collagen and provides structural support. It anchors the vessel to surrounding tissues. The middle layer, the tunica media, is composed of smooth muscle cells and elastic fibers. This layer plays a major role in the vessel's ability to contract and dilate, to adjust its diameter in response to the signals it receives, and to influence resistance to blood flow as the cardiovascular system requires. The inner layer, the tunica intima, contains the endothelium, a lining of endothelial cells only one cell thick. So thin it requires magnification to be seen clearly, and yet so functionally important that healthy blood pressure regulation depends in part on its integrity. This inner lining, the endothelium, is not passive tissue. It is biologically active tissue, continuously sensing, continuously signaling, continuously responding to the blood moving across it. It helps regulate vascular tone. It produces nitric oxide, the molecule that signals the smooth muscle of the tunica media to relax and dilate. It participates in clotting and inflammatory signaling. It influences the movement of substances between blood and tissue. It is the vessel's intelligence. And when vascular health begins to deteriorate, endothelial dysfunction is often part of the story. Here is where the vascular story becomes more complicated. Blood vessels are constantly receiving signals from sympathetic nerves, from circulating hormones, from the kidneys, from the endothelium itself, from local metabolic conditions inside the tissue. One of the systems influencing vascular tone is the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nerve terminals release noradrenaline through adrenergic receptors. That signaling can promote constriction in many vascular beds. In an acute stress response, this can help redistribute blood and support the demands of the moment. But chronic hypertension is not simply an acute stress response that never switched off. Over time, sympathetic overactivity, renal mechanisms, hormonal signaling, endothelial dysfunction, metabolic disease, and sustained mechanical pressure can interact. Vascular tone can become abnormal. Small arteries can remodel. The relationship between the thickness of the vessel wall and the size of the lumen can change, and resistance to blood flow can remain elevated. This is vascular remodeling, not a muscle simply refusing to relax. A living structure changing its architecture in response to long-term conditions. As resistance within the vascular system increases, the heart must push blood against a greater opposing force. And when elevated vascular resistance becomes part of the resting state, pressure can remain elevated even outside acute stress. The floor can rise, not because one vessel forgot how to relax, because the hemodynamics of the system have changed. Now, the endothelium and what happens to it under elevated pressure. The endothelial cells that line the vessel wall are sensitive to the mechanical forces produced by blood flowing against them. Under conditions of orderly flow, endothelial cells respond to shear stress through signaling pathways that support nitric oxide production, vascular homeostasis, and healthy regulation of vascular tone. But at certain locations in the arterial tree, branch points, curves, and bifurcations, flow patterns can naturally become more disturbed. These regions are especially vulnerable to endothelial dysfunction and atherosclerotic plaque formation. Hypertension, inflammation, smoking, diabetes, abnormal lipoprotein exposure, and other cardiovascular risk factors can further worsen the vascular environment. The endothelium changes. Nitric oxide bioavailability can fall. Oxidative stress can increase. Adhesion molecules can be expressed. Immune cells are recruited, and the vessel wall becomes more permissive to the processes that drive atherosclerosis. Here is what actually happens inside the vessel wall as plaque develops. ApoB containing lipoproteins, including LDL particles, can enter and become retained within the arterial intima. Once retained, these particles can undergo modification. Oxidation is one form of that modification. The immune system responds. Monocytes enter the vessel wall. They develop into macrophages. Macrophages take up modified lipoproteins. Foam cells form. Fatty streaks develop. And over time, atherosclerotic plaque can begin to grow. This is why the story cannot be reduced to one sentence. The lipoprotein matters, the concentration matters, the duration of exposure matters, the vessel wall matters, blood flow patterns matter, inflammation matters, blood pressure matters, smoking and metabolic health matter. Atherosclerosis develops through the retention of ApoB-containing lipoproteins within the arterial wall, and the inflammatory, cellular, and structural responses that follow. The concentration and duration of exposure matter. The biology of the arterial wall matters. Blood flow patterns matter. Other cardiovascular risk factors can accelerate the process. This is not one molecule acting alone. It is a disease process unfolding inside a living arterial wall. The elastic properties of the vessel. A healthy artery is not a rigid pipe. It is a dynamic, elastic, responsive structure that expands with each heartbeat and recoils between beats, absorbing the pressure wave of the cardiac contraction and smoothing it into more continuous, steady flow through the smaller vessels beyond. This elastic function, called arterial compliance, is what buffers the cardiovascular system against the mechanical stress of the heartbeat itself. A highly compliant artery absorbs the systolic pressure peak, the surge of pressure at the moment of cardiac contraction, and reduces the pressure wave that the smaller vessels downstream have to manage. A stiffer artery absorbs less of that pulsatile energy. The pressure wave travels faster. More pulsatile energy can reach downstream vascular beds. The heart and smaller vessels are exposed to a different hemodynamic load. Over time, arterial stiffness, hypertension, vascular remodeling, and organ-level microvascular damage can reinforce one another. The direction is not always one way. High pressure can promote stiffness. Greater stiffness can worsen systolic pressure. Another network. Another set of systems capable of reinforcing one another. The structural changes inside the vessel wall. Structural arterial stiffness develops through multiple interacting changes. Collagen can accumulate and become more cross-linked. Elastin can fragment and lose functional integrity. Vascular smooth muscle cells can change phenotype and behavior. Calcification can develop. Oxidative stress and inflammation can influence the vessel wall. Advanced glycation end products, chemical changes that accumulate in proteins and tissues over time, can alter the extracellular matrix, and sustained high pressure itself can contribute to vascular remodeling. The result is a vessel that is structurally less compliant, less able to absorb pulsatile energy, and increasingly part of the hypertension it once was simply exposed to. Age matters here. Genetics matter, blood pressure matters, metabolic health matters, smoking matters, kidney disease matters, inflammation and oxidative stress matter. The conditions surrounding the vessel accumulate across time, and the arterial wall carries part of that history. Written in the vessel wall, reflected imperfectly in the hemodynamics of the system. Now, the question every man listening eventually asks, can the vessel recover? The answer is, some aspects of vascular function can improve. Endothelial function can respond to changes in blood pressure, physical activity, smoking exposure, metabolic health, and medical treatment. Nitric oxide bioavailability can improve. Blood pressure reduction can reduce the mechanical load acting against the arterial wall. Regular physical activity can improve vascular function. And when atherosclerotic risk is treated aggressively, including appropriate lipid-lowering therapy when clinically indicated, plaque can become more stable. In some settings, modest regression has also been observed. But this is where honesty matters. Not every structural change fully reverses. Advanced calcification does not simply disappear. Severe fibrosis does not melt away because a man learned to breathe slowly. Decades of vascular aging are not erased in 30 days. The vessel wall is living tissue, but living tissue also carries history. So the objective is not to promise a complete return to some untouched biological past. The objective is to change the trajectory. Lower the pressure when it is elevated. Treat the lipoprotein burden when it is excessive. Stop smoking. Improve metabolic health. Move the body. Protect sleep. Address chronic stress. Use medication when prescribed. And give the vascular system fewer damaging conditions to adapt to. Over time, function can improve. Risk can fall. Progression can slow. And some vascular changes may partially reverse, not because the vessel forgot its history, because the conditions shaping its future have changed. That is the principle. Not perfect reversal, a different trajectory. Chapter 9, the heart under constant alarm, moves from the vessel wall to the pump. What sustained high pressure can do to the heart muscle itself. Why the left ventricle can begin to thicken. How compensation can become dysfunction. And why the heart can appear strong while quietly becoming less efficient. This is the silent current. Chapter 8, complete. Your body has been trying to tell you something. It is time to listen.